get going, Julie, and what I'll do is we'll call on people afterwards. I want to just lay down the predicate and then we'll jump into discussion. So welcome everybody. This is Simon Rosenberg from Now at Hopium Chronicles, my new hangout, my new political hangout. I've really been enjoying being with all of you in this new platform on Substack. We're close to 20,000 subscribers now. We're growing rapidly. It's just been a great community that we're building together. And if any of you have a chance to weigh in and check out some of the discussion we had today on Hopium about people talking about all the grassroots work they're doing, what kind of projects they are excited about, it was really affirming to see all these proud patriots across the country who are coming together here and in their communities to make sure their democracy doesn't slip away. And so just a big thank you to all of you who have been participating in that discussion today. And, I start many of these discussions now with this basic 3 points, which is Joe Biden has been a good president, the country is better off, and the Democratic Party is strong. And if you start from those three basic realities, good president, country's better off, the Democratic Party is strong, I think it leads you to where we'll be tonight in our discussion about our current state of politics, because to me, those are the most important points. But to discuss where we are now and what's happening this summer, let's go back a little bit to discuss what happened in 2022, because it's still very relevant to what's happening today. In 2022, we outperformed all expectations, right? We had an historic midterm. We picked up a Senate seat. We picked up 4 state legislative chambers. We picked up net 2 governorships. We just barely lost the House, making it easier for us to win it back next time. It's very strong performance in the House. And that's with all the high inflation, low Biden approval, all the midterm dynamics, the so-called red wave was coming. And yet Democrats actually outperformed expectations. There were really, as I like to say, 2 elections in 2022. There was a bluer election inside the battleground states, and there was a redder election outside the battleground states. And the reason that matters is that what it showed is that when we put this new big muscular grassroots that we have all around the country, the millions of people who are giving money and writing postcards and doing texting and phone calling and canvassing from wherever they are, when we concentrate those campaigns, we can do extraordinary things. And in 2022, despite everyone's expectation that we were going to do poorly, we not only in the House specials after Dobbs, we outperformed in the House specials by 7 percentage points over 2020. We saw voter registration become much more democratic. Our campaigns outraised Republican campaigns in many cases by 4, 5, 6 to 1 in an unprecedented advantage, which allowed us to build unprecedentedly large and muscular campaigns all across the country. And we then saw that very strong performance in these muscular campaigns push the early vote to the upper end of what was possible. We outperformed 2018 and 2020 in the early vote, a sign of incredible organizational strength for the Democratic Party. And what that led to was this remarkable midterm, where we actually outperformed 2020, the Biden results in Arizona, Colorado, Georgia, Minnesota, Michigan, New Hampshire, Pennsylvania. We got to 59% in Colorado, 57% in Pennsylvania, 55% in Michigan, 54% in New Hampshire. We just got to 56% in the Wisconsin Supreme Court race and 57% in Ohio just a few weeks ago. We continued to perform at extraordinary levels in a climate that was supposed to be hostile to us, right? And so the good news is that where we built these big campaigns and controlled the information environment and put the grassroots to work, we did extraordinary things. But the admonition is that where we didn't run those big campaigns, in 4 big states like Texas, Florida, New York, and California, we fell back. And it's a reminder that the Republicans are still much louder than we are. They still are much better at controlling the daily discourse than we are. And that one of the things I talk about is that we need to close this loudness gap with Republicans this year. We'll come back to that. So we leave 2022 in very strong shape with a much better election than anybody anticipated. And what we've seen in 23 is that basic same dynamic of Democratic overperformance, Republican underperformance, and struggle has continued in election after election all across the country this year, right? We saw it in the Wisconsin Supreme Court race where we took that away from them. We took away Colorado Springs and Jacksonville, Florida, two traditionally Republican cities that were well funded, by the way. We saw it in the Pennsylvania House special that determined control of the Pennsylvania House. And then we just saw it in Ohio just a few weeks ago. Incredible, strong performance by the Democrats. And I think that we just have to recognize that right now, due to all the things that are happening, the ugliness of MAGA, the success of the Biden presidency, right, we're in very strong shape. And it's why I talk about how what we should be thinking about in this election is not just winning the election, but going big, expanding our coalition, taking away demographic and geographic real estate from Republicans, doing what I call getting to 55, trying to get to 55% of the national vote. You know, from 1992 to 2004, we averaged 47% of the vote in those presidential elections. And then we identified these new demographic opportunities and geographic opportunities through the rise of the Hispanic vote, the millennial vote at that time, who were coming into our electorate in large numbers. And we built a politics to speak to these new opportunities. And since we executed that strategy in 05 and 06, and Obama did incredibly in 07 and 08, Democrats have averaged 51% of the vote in the last four elections. That's a 4-point jump, 47 to 51. I think we now can get up to 55. And I just want to recognize, when I just sort of acknowledge about where the Democratic Party is right now. In 1992, when I went to go work for Bill Clinton, we had lost 5 out of 6 presidential elections, and many of them weren't even, were blowout elections. The only one we won during that time was in 1976 after Watergate, the biggest scandal in American history up to that point. And so we were struggling to win and get more votes in national elections. Clinton set out to try to change that and build a national politics for the Democrats that allowed us to win in presidential elections again. And in the 8 elections since 1992, we've actually won more votes in 7 out of 8. It's the best political run of an American political party in all of our history in terms of the popular vote. And Republicans have only broken 48% once in those 8 elections. In the last 4 elections, as I mentioned, we've averaged 51% of the vote. We're the majority party in America. This is a center-left nation. And the last time that we averaged 51% of the vote in 4 consecutive elections was in the 1930s and 1940s under FDR, right? That's my English bulldog, Tug, who may be joining us from time to time tonight. And so this has been a remarkable run for us. And the Democratic Party is strong, and we should be proud of where we are, recognizing that as we head into 2024, I would much rather be us than them. We keep winning, they keep struggling. We've done a good job in the presidency. Once again, they've got Trump and DeSantis and their Star Wars bars of candidates that they're going to be putting forward tomorrow night. And so I think we're in, as I look ahead, I would much rather be us than them. I feel good about where we are, but obviously we have a lot of work to do. And we've learned from 2000 and 2016, you can't take anything for granted. Things can be decided by a handful of votes, and we got to work hard. But I think we're in a different place now. I think we have to start from a place of strength and look at expansion, and not just winning the election, but winning big. Because if we can make this election a clear repudiation of MAGA, it will be good for the country, it will be good for the Democratic Party, and frankly, I think it will be good for the Republican Party, because we need a traditional center-right political party again in America, and not be worried about every election that our democracy could slip away if somehow we stumble, or if the Russian intervention is bigger than we anticipated. Whatever it is that happens in close elections, we need to make this one a blowout. And I think it's there for us. I think we have the power to do it. And so, this summer, as I beam into this moment, right, the night before the first Republican debate, I just want to acknowledge that I think we've had a really good summer and they've had a really crappy summer. I mean, all the major talking points against Joe Biden as president this summer have gotten much harder to make. Inflation's come down, the economy stayed really strong, the deficit is much lower than it was when he came into office. He's done a really good job on the economy. And with inflation coming down now to pre-pandemic levels, the basic argument about inflation has been taken away from Republicans. We've also seen that his border plan is working much better than many anticipated, and frankly, including some people in the administration, and that the flow to the border, which was such a problem earlier this year and late last year, has abated to a great degree. It's not gone, and we've still got struggle there, but clearly, smart policy has made things better. And then also on crime, which is one of the central Republican attacks against Biden and the Democrats, we know that crime rates went up during COVID. It's not a big surprise given the disruption that happened in our country. But we also know today that the murder rates have come way down all across America precipitously. Very encouraging data. We're starting to get back to sort of pre-COVID levels of crime rates in the United States. And we also know that crime rates in the US are still a fraction of what they were 30 years ago. We're in the country's far safer today than we were, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, 50 years ago. And Republicans are really exaggerating the current threat of crime. We know that, for example, the murder rates in Republican states are much higher than Democratic states. In many of the measures about crime, it's actually far more dangerous to live in Republican states than Democratic states. And we also know that the one big issue around crime that we care about and safety is the gun violence that we've seen, the unprecedented gun violence, which is the gun violence that we see, the dead kids in schools and the murders that we see. This is a Republican strategy. This is the America that they want. And I think it's a powerful indictment of them and where they're going as a national party, that we continue to have such a struggle in addressing these core issues of public safety that their lax gun laws have brought to the United States. And so I think, Joe Biden's had a really good summer, and the Republican talking points have had a really bad summer. And then you've got Trump and all the indictments. And I want to say one thing about this, which is that I think as I look, and I wrote about this a lot in the last 10 days, I think the Republicans have done two things in the last few years, each of which could keep them out of power for a very long time. One is that they tried to overturn an American election and end American democracy. That should be something that cost them in with voters, not just in the next election, but potentially for a long time. And I don't think people really have come to terms with what we're about to see in terms of the prosecutions. A month ago, Jack Smith, when he indicted Trump, 3 of his 4 charges involved conspiracy, that this was a conspiracy to overturn the election and to end American democracy. Well, who was part of that conspiracy? Hundreds of Republican officials from all across the country, including the Republican chairwoman, Ronna Romney McDaniel, who's on camera admitting to having participated in all of this. And just like the DOJ has prosecuted successfully over 1,000 people so far over the last few years in this attack on our democracy, the next 200 to 300 indictments are going to be Republican officials, prominent ones. We've already seen this now happen in Georgia and in Michigan. And this could also happen in Arizona and in Nevada and Wisconsin and other places where it's happened in Georgia, where the fake electors were attempted by the Republicans. This was a party-wide Republican conspiracy to overturn the American election and to end American democracy. This wasn't just on Donald Trump. He was one of the conspirators, perhaps the leader of the conspiracy. But everyone who was part of the conspiracy is now open and subject to legal action. And it means, and the key thing that we have to believe as patriots and people who love our country, is that every single person who participated in this effort to end American democracy needs to be prosecuted. No one can get off, because if people get off, it creates an incentive for it to be tried again. Justice has to be not just blind, but rigorous and tough here in the coming years. And I think that, after Watergate, there were trials that went on of people who participated in Watergate for a decade. We could be seeing now, as a backdrop to American politics, a decade of dozens and dozens of trials of essentially Republicans who committed treason in the United States. I mean, this is, trying to overturn an election and end American democracy is the most serious political crime you can commit in a democracy. And they deserve to be punished, and the American people deserve to punish them at the polls in 2024. But the second big thing that Republicans have done in recent years that could push them very, very far away from voters is Dobbs and abortion extremism. I think what's happened with reproductive health in this country is an incredible tragedy. And Republicans have brought incredible pain and suffering on millions and millions of people potentially. And this is the kind of thing that can also keep the Republicans out of power for a very long time. And the fact that they've done 2 of these things, to me, means that I think that the Republican brand is on a political abyss right now. They're in real trouble. I mean, they're already much more unpopular than Democrats in all the polling, right? We also know that we've won more votes in 7 out of 8 elections. So they don't have a lot of, if they keep falling, where are they going to go? I mean, they're going to be at the bottom of the barrel pretty soon. And that's why I think when I look at what's happening in America today, Democrats have to be on offense. they're giving us an opportunity to grow our coalition, win over new voters, build a new dynamic pro-democracy coalition that ends the dark reign of MAGA over the Republican Party, and make sure that we just have normal politics again, where one party wins, the other party loses, and our democracy doesn't go away. I think that's what we all want. And I just want to say, finally, thanks to all of you. I mean, the reason that we've done so well and that we're performing at the upper end of what's possible is because of all of you. Millions of Americans have gotten off the sidelines, given money, written their postcards, done the work, and they've pushed democratic performance to the upper end of what's possible. Our democratic grassroots is stronger today than it's ever been. And it's all because of everyone who's here tonight and all the work that you do. I'm so blown away and inspired by the passion, the grit, the intensity that I witness all the time in the talks that I give to all the groups that I speak to 2 to 3 groups a week. I'm already have many speaking gigs booked for the fall. And every time I give a talk, I'm so blown away by the passion and intensity that I see, the love of country that I see from all of you. And so I want to just close by saying thank you. This has been a really good summer for our politics. It's been a really bad summer for them. I think we should be deeply optimistic about what we're going to be capable of doing next year. But it's only going to happen if we continue to do the work, because as all of you who know about hopium and this phrase that I've adopted, to me, what hopium is, it's hope with a plan. We don't hope that the elections are going to go well. We do the work to make it so. And in 2022, that's what we did. It could have been a red wave, but it wasn't. And it was because of the work that we did together. We have to continue. We also saw, in Wisconsin and in Georgia and in Wisconsin and in Florida and in Colorado and in Pennsylvania and in Ohio, right? We continue to do the work. We continue to get extraordinary results. We just don't hope that tomorrow is going to be better. We have hopium. We have the power to make it so. So keep working hard, everybody. I'm really glad you're part of this community. I'm having more fun than an aging political operative could ever have with all of you. And let's open it up for some questions. And thanks, everybody, for being here tonight. And I'm sorry, my nose is a little itchy tonight. I'm not sure what's going on. Let me just dive first into some written questions. Let me just address the third party issue, because this is obviously very front of mind and I didn't cover it. And I've written about this extensively on hopium. I'm not as concerned about third party entrance as many are. And there are a couple of reasons why, right? One is that, first of all, our response to all of them is the same, which is we just have to build up Joe Biden and continue to sell his accomplishments and try to get to 55 and make this an election that's a blowout. So it doesn't matter what any of these third party efforts do. Second is, I think the most powerful of all the rogue party, third party efforts that are underway is the one that's getting the least amount of attention, which is the Never Trumpers, Never MAGA folks around the country who've already had such a powerful impact on our politics. I mean, we wouldn't have had the election results in 2022 that we had without Liz Cheney's help and Bill Kristol's help and, the Lincoln Project and all the people who are former Republicans who've allied with us temporarily to make sure that MAGA doesn't win. And we have to recognize that they're the most powerful force of all these rogue party, third party groups. And we should be building them up and talking about them as much as we can, because these are proud patriots. I mean, they've done something so hard, right? Which is to take on their party. I can't even imagine. I'm having lunch with Bill Kristol in a few weeks, and I often say that the courage of these Never Trumpers has been incredible. And that group could be even more powerful in 2024. Imagine if Liz Cheney endorses Joe Biden and campaigns with him, what that could do, the permission structure that could create for Republicans to leave the Republican Party. And I think the combination of their extremism, Trump's awfulness, their attacks on democracy, abortion, is loosening a lot of people that may vote Republican and giving them an opportunity to bring them over to our side. How long they stay with us, we don't know. We just have to worry about 2024. And so I think when we talk about these efforts, we should be spending far more time praising and building up the most successful of all these efforts, the proven one, which is the Never Trumpers. I also just don't think that I think no labels in theory could have been really consequential in this election, but I don't think the way they're doing it will make them so. I also think Joe Manchin is not a compelling candidate. And so I just don't think that any of these things are really going to amount to very much. And they only matter if the election's close. And that's why we really have to focus on building ourselves up and having this be a blowout. We can't ignore them. I'm not saying ignore them, but we also can't make them more powerful than they are. And I have a little bit of a critique of my colleagues and friends in the Democratic Party about the way we've handled no labels. I think we should be making them small and inconsequential. Joe Manchin has no chance of becoming president of the United States. He's got no chance of getting above 7 or 8% in the election, in my view. It's possible he has no chance of even getting any Democratic votes. And so does he really want to be the Jill Stein at the end of this long career that he's had? He wants to become Jill Stein. He wants to be the spoiler and not somebody who's seen as a serious politician, because there's almost certainly not going to be debates next year. And so it means that this holdout they have as a third-party candidate, that somehow they get on stage and make their case and catch fire, right? That's not going to happen. And so there's just no scenario where there is a middle lane that pulls in from Democrats and Republicans and creates a viable alternative to the two parties. And then finally, on no labels, I just want to say, and I know many of the people involved in no labels, and know many of them for a long time, I've been a little shocked about how much they just lie all the time about everything. And it's for an organization that's trying to claim that they're, a reform movement trying to fix American politics. They hide their donors. They've got the most opaque funding process one could possibly imagine. Their basic argument about the Democrats and the Republicans, that the two parties are the same, that Joe Biden and Donald Trump are the same, is one of the worst and most rancid lies that I've ever heard from major politicians in my entire career. It's so obviously not true. And the final lie is that they have a chance of winning the election, which is a joke. I mean, in the first major poll done that really pitted Joe Manchin as a third-party candidate with Jon Huntsman and with Joe Biden and Donald Trump named, not an abstract middle ground candidate, but named, Manchin was at 2%. And so, at the core of this is a bunch of angry and rancid lies. And I think we have to continue to call it out. Finally, Robert Kennedy, he's not running as a Democrat. He's not appearing in front of Democratic audiences. He's not speaking to mainstream media. He's only talking to Republicans. He's auditioning to be Trump's vice president. And Trump may be desperate enough that he may even pull that loony guy onto his ticket next year to try to claim this is some kind of bipartisan unity ticket. It's very important for us now to be clear-eyed about who Kennedy is. He's running as a Republican. He's not speaking to any Democrats. It's a ridiculous conceit in the national media, and I've been pretty aggressive about this, to claim that he's running in the Democratic primary. Has he been to South Carolina? Has he been to New Hampshire? Has he been to any of the early states? Is he appearing in front of Democratic constituency groups? Zero. He's not running in the Democratic primary. He's running to audition to be Trump's VP. And I think at the end of the day, it won't work. I think Trump's going to have to pick a woman, in my view. I mean, to have any chance of trying to mitigate the damage that the abortion issue is going to do to their party next year. And so I think we have to be clear-eyed. And I think what's really important as Democrats is we cannot give these efforts power they do not have. And we are very good at this. We build things up into being, because we're scared and concerned and fearful sometimes, and we build things up and give people and ideas and candidates and parties power they do not have. We have to get better and more disciplined about that. I think all these are spoilers. They're weak. They're a waste of our time. They're not strong and powerful. Do not give them power they do not have. And then finally, I think that voters know this election really matters. And I think the ability for someone to throw away a vote, given the threat of Trump and MAGA, it's going to be much harder than it was in 2016 and 2000. It's not impossible, which is why, again, what do? We sell Joe Biden. We sell our accomplishments. We should be spending 2/3 of our communications time in our networks telling the positive story of the Democratic Party and not talking about them. And I have this little exercise I do with all of you where I say that Joe Biden has been a good president, period. The country is better off, period. The Democratic Party is strong, period. No commas, no semicolons, no buts, no howevers. As a former English major, right, we have to get better at speaking in declarative sentences and telling our story. Every time we use a comma and a but and a however, right, we're bringing their language and their arguments into our discourse. They're really good at that. They don't need any help. Let them do that. What we have to get better at is making our case, staying on offense, telling our story. This is what I do a lot in Hopium, which is I spend a lot of time talking about us and not about them. We need to tell our story. We know from polling that if people don't know a lot about what Joe Biden's done. And when they're informed of it, his numbers go way up. I'm very encouraged by the new ads they've released this week. The line that is something that I've talked about making the American people the hero of the story. I feel the Biden media has been excellent this year. And now they're starting to spend real money. And I think what you're going to start to see, his numbers are going to slowly creep up. The Democratic community has no reason to be seriously engaged in this election right now. We don't have a primary. There's nothing threatening our candidate, right? People are having a summer. On the Republican side, they're fully engaged. They've got a wild primary, lots of candidates. They've got a debate coming up. They've got the threats to Trump. Their side is fully engaged. Our side's having summer, and we're still ahead by 2 to 3 points on average in all the national polls. And so I feel really good. I think Joe Biden is exactly where he needs to be. I would be surprised if he was in better shape. If we're going to win by 10 points, I would have imagined that Joe Biden would be exactly where he is right now, because our side has no reason to be engaged in this election right now. People are having a summer, which they should be having a summer. The Republicans are having the worst summer that we've seen a party have in a long time. And so they're engaged. We're not. When our coalition starts to engage, my expectation is that you're going to see Biden's numbers come up another 2 to 3 points, putting us in very strong shape to win next year. That was a very long answer to a short question, but I covered a lot of ground here. Yeah, Deirdre says the new video was awesome. I'm going to try to pick the questions that are the ones that I know are most front of mind, because I talk a lot to groups. And about Vice President Harris. I know Vice President Harris, and I've known her for over 20 years. When I ran for chairman of the party in 2005 against Howard Dean, she was one of my national co-chairs, and she campaigned for me in Sacramento at an event in Sacramento. And I've known her a long time. And I always thought she was among the most charismatic and talented politicians that I had ever met in all my years of doing this. Particularly in person, right? I mean, she's got incredible, she's a star, right? She's a star. When you meet her, you're around her, you feel like she's got it, And I think that sometimes we forget that up until just a few years ago, she was a lawyer. I mean, she had been a prosecutor in San Francisco and been the attorney general in California. And, when you're the attorney general, you don't work on economic issues or foreign policy issues or healthcare issues, right? You prosecute people, you deal with law enforcement and law and order. And it's possible that her transition from being the attorney general of California to being the second in command was a little bit bumpier because of the narrowness of her experience over time. And I think what's happening now, as she gets more comfortable, as they're putting her out there, as she's doing more events with foreign leaders, more substantive events, where she's really, gone from being sort of the rookie, right, to now a more experienced vice president, I think you're starting to see the confidence in her. The confidence that I saw in her 20 years ago when I first met her. You're starting to see that confidence and that charisma, come out more than we saw before. And I think you're going to see her. I think that there's clearly the campaign is investing a lot in her. The White House is investing a lot of her. She's taking on far more responsibility, which is what should happen. And so I feel really good also about her. I think the way she's being managed, the way that she's taking up more space, the way she's really trying to lead and be more assertive and aggressive, you can see it in her body language, right? You can see it in her performance, that she's confident and strong, and she feels good about the work she's doing. It's great. And we need that, right? We need her to be as strong as possible on the ticket next year, because we know that the central offering of the Republican Party since the 1960s and the advent of the Southern strategy has been exploitation of racial fear. And they're going to really use that very heavily in the election next year. They don't have burning cities like they had in 2020. They don't have all the things that they use, the rapist migrants and all these boogeymen, these racial boogeymen that Republicans use to scare, their base. They're going to use her. And it's really important that, we build her up and make her as strong as possible as we head into the election, because just pragmatically, it's very clear where they're going to go. I mean, their attacks on Biden as president have basically evaporated. And so what they're doing now is they're moving into other areas of attacks. They're moving into, they're escalating dramatically the attacks on him as a man and as a father, right? In terms of the Hunter Biden stuff, this is unrelenting, unyielding, unceasing, right? Despite the fact that they've been unable to uncover anything that matters. And also you're seeing, I think, the attacks moving on to Kamala. What happened this summer is their attacks on Biden as president really weakened and evaporated to a great degree. It's a huge problem for the Republican Party, which is why, as we head into this next budget fight that will be coming right after Labor Day, just like what happened with the debt ceiling, their goal there isn't to reduce the deficit or to be fiscally responsible. Their goal is to do as much harm to Joe Biden as humanly possible. And they know they're losing this election. And so you're going to see, I think, more desperation, more wildness from them, as their party continually looks like one of the worst political parties in American history, and we look like a competent, capable, serious party that's leading the world to preserve democracy here and everywhere. And so I think the expectation should be is wild, escalating attacks on all the parts of the Biden-Harris thing that isn't about the Biden presidency itself. And I think that's to be, because they need to feed the Fox News beast every night and put the attacks out there. Let me go to hold on. Let me just give me a second here. I'm going to call on some folks who raised their hand. And Donna Plunkett, dive in here, Donna, and keep it short because we got a lot of questions. Okay. Let me get you.
I didn't raise my. I'm sorry, I did not raise my hand.
Okay. Do you have a question? We got you here, Donna. Anything on your mind?
No, just I really appreciate this what you do here, because it does put forward what we're all doing out here and gives us continued alliances with everyone that's on this call to say, yeah, we've got to keep going, we got to keep going, we got to keep going. So thank you.
No, thank you, Donna. And listen, on the post I did today, we've had hundreds of comments from people when I asked folks to sort of talk about and share what they're doing. If there are any of you out there that want to do work and feel like the work you're doing isn't satisfying, or you want to find a better place to do something that's more meaningful, go and look at the comments today. I allowed the comments to be viewed and open to everybody. You don't have to be a paid subscriber. And look at what others are doing. I will say that I'm glad you raised this, Donna. What's most important to me between now and the fall is Virginia. I mean, there's a lot of other things. We've got Ohio, we've got the Florida ballot initiative, we've got Mississippi potentially could be competitive, and Kentucky. But the Virginia House and Senate, state House and Senate races, to me, are the most important thing. If you can do one thing and make one contribution in one place, make calls or give money in one place, it should be into Virginia. There's a lot of different ways to get involved. There's many people who have posted today on the site for ways to get involved. The reason Virginia matters so much is that Virginia is the only southern state where now abortion is legal. And if we lose the legislature, Youngkin will pass an abortion restriction. It will turn a state that has been a blue state into something that will be almost unrecognizable. And also, it will give Youngkin's presidential campaign a huge boost. If we want to win next year, we need to win in Virginia. The stakes here are really high. I would love everyone to really contribute there in whatever way they can. Early vote is coming very soon, so voting is going to begin soon. There's a lot of ways to get involved. And we've got a very capable team leading the effort in Virginia. And so if I can ask, and I know that I try not to pick among all the various awesome projects that are out there, but to me, there are three things I'll say. One is Virginia. The second is continuing to work on becoming information warriors and being involved in the information debate every day. I talk about how I worked in the war room 31 years ago, and now I would like people to think, Donna, I'm gonna lower your hand here, is that I want people to think about how to think of the war room now, not as 20 sweaty kids drinking Red Bulls, producing rapid response videos, but it's 1 million people every day, learning the issues, spreading good news through their networks. Remember, if 1 million people reach 10 people each a day, that's 10 million people. Tucker Carlson in his heyday reached 3 million people a night. We have more agency and power here than we understand. We have to think of ourselves all as information warriors, all as people who can amplify the good messages of the Biden campaign, spread those good videos through your networks, do what I do, which is keep hopium alive, right? Keep pushing hopium every day. This is so powerful. And I think this is something that's so essential in order to cut the loudness gap we have with them and and tell our story more effectively. Because we know from polling, when people learn about what we've done, our numbers go way up. And then finally, I know that many of you are working on youth voter registration. To me, this is an urgent priority for the family this year and next year. I've done a whole analysis showing that in my Get to 55 memo, that if you take the 2020 vote and leave everything the same in 2024 and change only one thing, which is that you make the under 45-year-old vote at the same level as their population distribution, which is not a crazy thing, right? Then Biden wins by 10 points. I mean, it should not be, we should not accept that the people who vote for us vote the least. And it's not their fault they don't vote more, it's our fault, right? We have to make, the water has to become warm in the Democratic Party for young people. We've got to engage them and make it clear that young people are not at the kids' table, but at the very center of everything that we do. This is something that's on us. This is something that's within our power. What I talk about in all of my work here at Hopium is everything I try to recommend that we do together are things that can be done and that need to be done. We need to drive youth turnout through the roof. And I'm going to be re-engaging. This is something I've spent a lot of time talking about at Hopium. You'll be getting an email on Friday with some more thoughts about this for those of you who are subscribers. This is a huge priority. Let me go to a few other raised hands. I'm gonna jump ahead a little bit and call my friend Ed Emerson, because he's an old buddy of mine, and he gets Ed, I'm calling on you. Are you here, Ed?
I am. How are you, brother?
It's great to see you, man. It's been forever. Thank you for being part of this. It's been fun. More old friends have started joining, and it's making this even more rewarding than it's been. So what's on your mind, Ed?
Well, a couple of things. One is that I think I'm working on any number of campaigns. I certainly look forward to working for Biden-Harris ticket. And I'm looking for a source because my Democratic friends are making me crazy. They're absolutely, I believe, repeating talking points given to them about Vice President Harris. I'll just use her as an example. Vice President Biden, or President Biden is one thing, but it seems like this thing about her being hard on her staff, this thing about her not having the depth, this thing about, it seems very coordinated to me, and it's very frustrating. So I appreciate very much you did a piece on the economy. You did a piece on the Washington Post talking about the economy. Yeah. Those sorts of things are just so important, and I appreciate your knowledge, and thought I'd come in and check some of that out. But I'm happy to be on the wagon and on the bandwagon, and do whatever I can. It's great to see you.
Join me in Hopium, man, and it's great to.
I'm there. I'm totally.
You've always been there. I mean, you've always been a joy to work with, and it's great to connect with you again. Thank you. And let me just address something that Ed raised, which is, I want everyone to realize, I started my career as a television news producer and writer. I worked for ABC News, and I wrote and was involved in writing primetime television shows in my 20s. So I grew up in the media business. And I was an early advocate of us adopting the internet as a political tool. I think it's hard, if you haven't studied the internet and current social media the way that I have, and many of us who've been, students of disinformation, it's hard to really comprehend how much disinformation and noise and negative sentiment is in our discourse every day. One of the things that I've become convinced on in the last few years is that MAGA's central strategy in American politics is to put negatives, to flood our discourse every day with negative sentiment. It's to make us feel bad about our country, our democracy, our institutions, our leaders, each other, Kamala Harris, right? And that they are just pumping out an enormous amount of just bullshit and negative sentiment every day. It's in our discourse. And part of what I'm trying to do here at Hopium is to help all of you understand that you can ignore all that, right? You don't have to participate in that. You don't have to let them live in your head every day. You don't have to repeat Republican talking points. I mean, one of my favorite posts that I often see on the site is someone will say, Simon, I went to dinner with 3 Democratic friends the other night. This just happened a few weeks ago. I'm forgetting. I think it was Irene. I don't remember who it was, but I went to dinner with 3 Democratic friends and they started dumping on Biden and Harris, and I used your stuff. And by the end of the dinner, I'd really turned them around and they learned about all this good stuff that Biden had done, and they understood now and they became excited about his presidency. Well, we all need to be doing that every day. And we need to be more disciplined as Democrats about not living in the place of negative sentiment. Because when we reinforce their negative sentiment, we're doing MAGA's work for them. Part of the way we defeat MAGA is by putting positive sentiment into the discourse, by going on offense, Ed, as we did in 1992 in the Clinton world, by trying to control the information environment, tell our story. You know, Bill Clinton in New Hampshire, the first major set of ads that he ran in the very first state, because Iowa wasn't competitive in 92, was that he was the man with a plan. He had a plan, and he had a plan for America. And we ran ads about that. And it had a huge impact on the election when his numbers soared, when people in New Hampshire realized that he had a plan and that he understood the struggle, the anxiety, all the things that we all have, and he had a plan to deal with it. Joe Biden has a plan. The plan that he's executed has been really successful. And we have to, as a family, spend less time in this fear, uncertainty, and doubt, and spend more time talking about all the good things that we do. I mean, it's amazing when I open up these talks oftentimes for questions. The first 20 or 30 questions are, Simon, I'm concerned about this. Simon, I'm worried about this. Simon, this is worrying me. This is concerning me. Why aren't the first 20 questions about, hey, it's really awesome about how many jobs were created last month. Joe Biden's kicking ass, right? Look what just happened in this summit between Japan and South Korea and all of this. We default to this place of fear, uncertainty, and doubt and worry, and it's killing us. We can't have the kind of election that we want next year if we allow fear, uncertainty, and doubt and anxiety to overwhelm us. One of the ways we deal with it was by doing all this work that we do. The other way we deal with it is by spending far more time. It's like working out, right? You have to discipline yourself to look away from all the darkness. And, I always joke that I don't want to see another post of Marjorie Taylor Greene. We all know she's crazy. We all don't need to dwell in it. We need to learn and tell the story of the greatness and the goodness of America, the greatness and goodness of the Democratic Party, the work that we do together. And let me just say this, because this is the core of my other presentation I do called With Democrats, Things Get Better, which I encourage all of you. I just put out a new version of it. I've come to believe this basic thing about the Democratic Party from the work that I've done over all of these years and the study that I've done and the campaigns that I've been on, which is that the world that FDR built, starting in his speech in January 1941, the Four Freedoms speech, that imagined a world built around freedom and not dominion, right? Not control and authoritarianism, but freedom. That concept of the Four Freedoms became embedded in the entire post-World War II order that was built. The Four Freedoms are in the United States, the United Nations Charter. It's in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. It was in the Atlantic Charter. And the whole world that evolved after World War II was built around this concept of freedom, which, by the way, Joe Biden has obviously embraced as his core value in his campaign. It is the core value of the modern Democratic Party. It is the core value of the modern world. And that world that FDR imagined after World War II that was built around freedom and not dominion has created a golden age in human history. In recent decades, more people lived under democracies than ever in any time in all of human history. Extreme poverty rates have plummeted. Global trade flows and economic growth have reached unprecedented levels all around the world. Life expectancy has gone from 45 years during FDR's time to 71 years all around the world. We are living in a golden age in human history. There's never been a better time to be alive for an average person than if there's been in this period of Pax Americana. And this opportunity to create this world where people have had more opportunity to do, all people of color, women, everybody, right, is something that we created as Democrats. This is not something that just happened. We imagined and built this, and we have fought to maintain it. And so it's my view that the Democratic Party that we're all part of has done more good for more people than any other organized political force in all of human history. We may be the most important force for good that there's ever been, political force for good that's ever been in all of human history. And that's why this fight that we're in now, this fight for freedom and democracy, to make sure it prevails here and all around the world is a foundational democratic fight. We were called once before to make sure that freedom and democracy prevailed in World War II. And we rose to the challenge and we made sure it did. And then we built a global system that enshrined it in everything that we do. But now we know that it's under threat. It's under threat from Russia and China, from MAGA here at home. And that's why we're all here, right? We all understand so fundamentally the reason you're here in a August night in the summer and not outside having margaritas with your friends, hanging out with Simon, is that because you know that we're in a time of enormous challenge. And I just want to share with you that I think that what you're part of here is not just Hopium, but you're part of one of the most consequential political projects in human history. And our work isn't done. And I hope that work, and if you can get a chance to watch my With Democrats presentation, With Democrats Things Get Better presentation, it's a 30-minute meditation on what I just talked about how the Democratic Party is the greatest force for good in perhaps all of human history, and that the world that we've invented is a golden age, which is why it is so important that we continue to fight to preserve these kinds of opportunities that people have in a time of enormous challenge. So thanks. And let me go to Pat. Pat, jump in here. Hey, Pat.
I chair Women for Josh Stein, who's running for governor. How do we fight the gerrymandering in North Carolina? We had Tricia Coughlin, who was a Democrat for 8 years.
I know.
And changed parties after literally within months of being elected as a Democrat,
Yeah.
which should be legal.
I know. So listen, obviously the answer is that we have to get Josh Stein elected. I was one of Josh's first contributors. Josh's sister, Gerda, was a dear friend of mine in college. And so I have a personal connection to the Stein family. And I've been in touch with Gerda again. She may be on tonight.
She's on she's part of my women.
Yeah, no, she's amazing. And she's been a dear friend for a long time. And what I'll say about North Carolina is, I talked a lot earlier tonight about expansion and growth. North Carolina is the most important expansion state for us this cycle. It's the number one priority. I tell people when I get asked about where should I put my energies and where should I tell grassroots groups that I speak to is that if you have a choice, right, invest in North Carolina, because we don't have the infrastructure there. You need help, right? You've got a great new party chair there. We've got great organizations that have sprung up there. But North Carolina has been a little bit out of our grasp. And you have among the most reactionary illiberal state legislatures in the country. And so part of our job is we have to come liberate all of you in North Carolina from these terrible MAGA Republicans that have created a veto-proof majority in the legislature. And, to me, this is one of our highest priorities, is getting Josh Stein elected, winning in North Carolina. And I think one of the great opportunities that we have there, as you know, is that the Republican gubernatorial nominee is certainly going to be a MAGA extremist. I mean, he is a conspiracy theorist, an extremist, the highest order. I think that we have an opportunity to create a contrast there that perhaps has been a little bit difficult for us to make in recent years. You all know the Biden campaign is all in North Carolina. I don't think this is a head fake. They're all in. They need to create one or two more states just mathematically. They can't run on the map they won on last time. They need to, and they're going to have the money for expansion. This new ad buy that just went up by the Biden campaign includes North Carolina. Charlotte and Raleigh-Durham are in the buy, right? So there are Biden ads now running in North Carolina. They're also running in Florida, by the way. They're not giving up on Florida, and none of us should give up on Florida. That's the next most important expansion state. So, look, I think that I've seen a lot of private polling in North Carolina in the last few months, and I can tell you that we can win there. We had a disappointing election in 2022. It happens, right? But in terms of the brands, the Republican and Democratic brands, we are in good shape. We're in better shape than Democrats in North Carolina understand. And obviously, you're a state with lots and lots of young people. And if we can, launch a youth voter registration drive in North Carolina, the impact it could have in the state could be lasting, not just in 2024, but continuing. So Pat, you're not alone. I've already spoken to several groups in North Carolina. I'll always come back, whatever I can do to help. And, Tom Bonnier and I gave a talk to the Democratic Party of DC, and they were talking about adopting other states where they could do work and canvass and make calls. And even though a lot of people were saying Pennsylvania, I was like, no, go to North Carolina. We need you in North Carolina in 2024. So I'm there, I'm with you. And good luck, Pat. Stay in touch and thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you.
Let me go to Susan. Susan, jump in here.
Hi, I knew you would come to me. I have a kitten who's snuggling with me right now.
Of course, it
Well, it's
always happens.
Combination snuggling and suckling.
Yeah, okay. So what's on your mind, Susan?
A couple of questions. First of all, to partner with the woman just now to let you know that this weekend I'm starting weekly phone banks in California, funded by Nancy Pelosi, who pays me to run the office. And we're going to be calling into Virginia, specifically for Danica Rome and Phil, I think it's Hernandez who's running with her, and we may call for some others. And we're going to be calling California Central Valley, starting the calls early
Right.
now. We came close last time. But my question today is a concern that the networks are spiraling back down into where they were in 2016, and it's all Trump all the time. And they're not talking about Bidenomics or anything else.
Yeah.
And would this be something we should be worried about? And if so, what can we do?
Susan, it's a great question, and thank you for raising it. And just one thing I want to say that I'm also very active on Twitter, and so I get lots of. I'm going to pull you off here, Susan. And Susan, thank you for what you're doing. It's really important, and thank you. We have to stop comparing anything to 2016, right? 2016 is not going to happen again. I mean, MAGA's happened since 2016. Voters have this very clear understanding that something's gone wrong with the Republican Party. So 2016 is not the right comparison, and people have to stop using it because it was, Trump. We know Trump was seen as like a country club Republican. I mean, he was not seen as an extremist during that election, and so, but now he is, and his brand has changed, and he's far more damaged than he was in 2016. So, first of all, I don't think anything is going to be like 2016. MAGA, Trump like ripped open his suit, and MAGA came out in 2018, and in the 3 elections since 2018, we've performed at the upper end of what's possible 3 consecutive times. And so, the issue around MAGA are well litigated in the battlegrounds. Battlegrounds don't like MAGA, and the Republicans are going to be ultra MAGA in 2024, regardless of who's the nominee. The Trump trials are going to be in the background. The tragedies over abortion and Dobbs and abortion extremism are going to be in the background. They can't run away from MAGA, regardless of who their nominee is. They're still going to be super MAGA in 2024. But the point you make about Trump eating up the news, what we call in the news business, the news hole, right, every day, and drowning out everything else, is a legitimate issue, right? It's part of the reason why there is no serious challenge to him in the Republican primary. And I think he will be the nominee, and he could be the nominee as early as January of next year. I have a hard time understanding not just how he loses, but how anybody beats him. I don't think any of these candidates are strong enough to beat him. Could somebody have beaten him in the abstract? Of course. But I don't think any of these Star Wars bar candidates are going to be able to beat him. But it gets back to this core thing, Susan, I raised earlier, is that we have to get louder. We have more agency here than we understand. A lot of the work of the Democratic grassroots has been super data focused, super rigorous about maximum value in campaigns, calls, texting, postcarding, canvassing, giving money, and that's been really successful. And it's one way that we get loud, right? Our campaigns, the strength of our campaigns allows us to control the information environment in these places and win our elections. But I think we all need to do this second thing now to become an information warrior for democracy. And I spend a lot of time talking about this in Hopium, producing materials for all of you to use in the hand-to-hand combat that you do every day, and for everyone to become more purposeful, intentional about spreading positive information and putting our information into the daily discourse. And one of the things that I'll give you an example, right? This is the one central slide or graph that I use all the time that shows up in Hopium all the time, is this, I think, the killer argument for us in any meeting that you're in, which is that since 1989 and communism ended and the Berlin Wall fell, and we moved to a single now global economy after 1989. And since then, there have been 49 million jobs created in America. 47 million of them have been created under Democratic presidents, essentially all of them. And I think if you start from that basic place and understand that we've had 3 consecutive Democratic presidents that have seen strong job growth and the wages go up and the country prosper, deficits come down and the country prosper. We've had 3 consecutive Republican presidents that have seen recession, higher deficits, and American decline. When you look at that data tells the whole story of what's happened to America. That one chart, that one graph tells the story of America since 1989, which is there's been one party that's been good and successful and has led us to a better place, and another party that's failed to do its part repeatedly and has now descended into something dark and dangerous. That's the story we have to tell. To me, establishing that fundamental contrast between a party that continues to make things better for people and another party that continues to fail to do its part is the fundamental contrast that if we can establish as a national party in the next 15 months, we will have a successful election. And it's true, right? The important thing is this is true. The other thing that's true is that Joe Biden's been a good president and the country's better off. We have the data. There is no other side to the story. There's one side, there's one truth, which is we're far better off today than we were. And we have to go make that case. We know that people don't know it. And when they are informed and understand what Joe Biden's done, his numbers go way up. And so to me, the highest priority we have from a message standpoint, from a narrative standpoint, we've got to tell the economic story that Joe Biden and how the country's prospered. That's the story of these new ads. It's where the Biden campaign is going to be living for the next 6 months. It's where we all need to be living. It's where I'm producing an enormous amount of material to help all of you be more effective in making this case. We have a really big job to do, which is we've got to get Biden's approval rating up. We've got to get his standing on the economy up into positive territory. And we got to register every young person we can possibly do. If we do those 2 things in the next 6 to 9 months, we're going to have the election we want to have in 2024. It's often time that you win elections in the off year, not in the even year. We won the 2018 midterms in 2017 in many ways. We won the 1996 re-elect in 1995. I think we have the ability in the next few months to get as close, maybe lead into the spring, but we can win this election in the next 6 months if we do the work. And I'm really confident. It's 8 o'clock. Let me just take a couple. Let me go to Howard Park and then I'll let Howard do the last question here. Howard, jump in here. Go ahead, Howard.
And I just want to put
Howard, you're breaking up, Howard. We're not hearing you well.
Sorry. I'm here in Missouri, and we're going to defeat Josh Hawley. You were talking about Josh Stein, we want to elect. And
Howard, I'm going to turn you off because we just can't hear you well. But I'll try to call you at a future event. Okay. Let me just go to Paul, and Paul, you'll be the one to bring it to an end here for us. Paul, go ahead. Go ahead, Paul.
Three points. One of them you just covered, really, which is giving the public facts about how things have been better under Democrats than under Republicans. And that goes back not just to 1989, it goes back to 1932.
Yeah.
And it's a long history. The second point I'd like to make is that the Republicans are fairly good at making fun of us when we say something a little bit extreme or that could be easily misinterpreted. We don't seem to do that with them. And my goodness, they do give us a lot of material, which is inane, bizarre, weird, and so on. Should be punching bags for jokes, as instead of being honored with being taken seriously, and Marjorie Taylor Greene being a prime example. And the third thing is that I loved hearing all of your positive information, but there's one piece I have a trouble with, and that was the kind of cavalier concern about about third-party candidates, because obviously you remember the year 2000 and
Yep.
Ralph Nader's ego trip that gave us W.
Yep.
And,
So the,
you know,
let me address that,
So-
and let me just use it to wrap. Thank you, Paul, for those
Yeah.
insights, and thank you. So let me close by saying, first of all, thanks, everybody. You know, Hopium has been a great project, and I've loved working with all of you. I get so much inspiration and energy from all of you every day, and it motivates me to be the best that I can be in this work. And I've worked hard to try to produce really high quality content for all of you. So thank you, first of all. Second, thank you for all the work that you all do for our democracy. It's really matters. I try to speak to as many groups as possible, all of you who are doing work. And I always start by saying thank you. I'm so blown away by the passion, the integrity, as I discussed earlier, from all of you. Third is just to address I think the things that Paul raised are all things that we covered in various stages. I wasn't cavalier about the third party at all. What I'm saying is to me, the best way we deal with it is by winning this election by 10 points. And so it doesn't matter. And I think we can do that. And so I've written extensively about this. I also, Paul, if you noticed, I sort of went after No Labels pretty hard. I just think that what's happening right now is people are getting freaked out by the third parties candidates. And don't do that. Don't let them live in your head. What I'm saying is it's not cavalier. This is strategic, right? If you're worried about them, then go sell Joe Biden to all your friends. Learn the data, sell him, right? Don't let this stuff become paralyzing. And we cannot allow people to have power that they don't earn themselves. We're giving these folks power without them earning it. I think Cornel West and Jill Stein are a joke. I think Joe Manchin's a joke. I don't think these people are serious. I don't want to give them a degree of gravity and seriousness that they haven't earned. This is a strategy thing, Paul. This is not a cavalier thing. I don't think we're playing this properly. I think we're spending way too much time talking about the third party candidates and not enough time talking about Joe Biden. And so this is, to me, a strategy thing. And then finally, let me just say that what is so important for all of us, right, is to end on this basic idea that Joe Biden's been a good president. The country's better off. The Democratic Party is strong. And together, we continue to win elections. We continue to fight. We continue to successfully defend our democracy. We continue to stand for women who've had their rights taken away. We continue to fight for all the things that we all care about. And what's great is that all this new technology of remote texting and phone calling and giving and all the things that we can now do, postcarding, allows us to do this work, and Zooming, which allows us to connect to people like me when you're making dinner. We can all be in the game here. And I think what's happening is that our democracy is becoming stronger. When we defeat MAGA, we will come out of this a much stronger democracy. And think about this for a minute. I think about this all the time, that our politics now is being fueled by a couple million everyday people just doing the work and giving money, which speaks to who we are and what our values are, that we're small d Democrats. Their politics is funded and fueled by 100 oligarchs. And it speaks to what their politics are, which is that they become a party of oligarchy. We all understand the stakes here. We all understand how important this is. It's why we're all here tonight. And I just want to say it's been an honor to be in the trenches with all of you. But we have to keep working. We got really important work to do this fall that we discussed earlier. Learn from the various groups that are on our site and other places to go do your work. And remember that when, we're like a chorus, and the more voices we have in the chorus, the louder we get. The more work you do, the more effective we all become. You're not in it alone. There are millions of people getting up every month doing work to preserve our democracy. It's been an extraordinary thing to witness. It's been extraordinary to be part of it. I look forward to continuing this fight with all of you. Stay in touch, everybody. Thanks so much for giving a shit about your country and being here with us tonight. And go fight, win. Thanks, everybody.